As a general rule, football conspiracy theories get laughed out of the room. Tottenham's Lasagna Gate, the claim the 1998 World Cup final was rigged, and Steven Gerrard missing a pen to get Roy Hodgson sacked all find few supporters even on football Twitter. But one idea which does get some traction is about referee bias, specifically against Arsenal. It's perhaps unsurprising this notion has come to the fore lately. At the time of writing, Arsenal have played 25% of their minutes in 2022 down a man, having suffered 4 red cards in all competitions since the turn of the year. A trend hard to square with Arsenal's long-standing image as a team of soft creative types, rather than the rock-hard defensive unit under Arsene Wenger inherited back in the 90s. So in a way it makes sense to see the raft of reds as a product of something deeper, especially after Gabriel Martinelli's double yellow against Wolves for 2 offences in the same passage of play, following another dodgy dismissal on the same ground last season for David Luiz. Mikel Arteta poured fuel on the fire of supporter anger, saying this after the game.
It's the first time I've seen a red card like this in 18 years that I've been in this league. I think you have to be pretty willing to give a red card in that situation.
So is there really an agenda against the Gunners? Though it seems ludicrous on the face of it, we thought we'd dig into one of the most controversial topics in the sport to see if there's any evidence for the claim, and to see just how unusual the North Londoners' disciplinary record really is. This is Explained, and today we're asking whether referees have it out for Arsenal. However much we criticise refereeing in the English game, we're fairly sure that if one official routinely sent off Arsenal players for nothing, somebody would have noticed. So the only way this theory makes sense is if all or most of the division's refs are in on the act. But simple club rivalry isn't enough to suggest that. Michael Oliver supports Newcastle, Martin Atkinson follows Leeds, and Mike Dean is a Tranmere fanatic. So if we want to endorse the claim, we'd need another reason those men might hate Arsenal. And actually, there might just be one. When Arsene Wenger arrived in London in 1996, the makeup of the league was totally different. That year, there were just 122 foreign players in the division, with no Spaniards and only 4 Brazilians. While today, there are 51 players from those 2 countries alone, and 287 imports overall. So Wenger was a huge shock to a country which still saw itself as the creator and guardian of football. A feeling made worse when the Frenchman started to shake up the way things were done, banning drinking and smoking in his squad and encouraging players to improve their diets and take up yoga to hone their physical condition. And worst of all, it worked. The resentment was stoked by rival coaches, Alex Ferguson asking, what does he know about English football coming from Japan? Then came suspicion about his recruitment. Patrick Vieira, Dennis Bergkamp and Thierry Henry came in from Italy, while even squad players like Oleg Luzhny or Igor Stepanovs were drafted in from abroad. And while it may be unthinkable now, this prompted a huge identity crisis in the English game. When Arsenal put out a matchday squad without a single English player in 2005, Wenger had to spend weeks defending himself in the press, explaining that he was investing £4 million a year in the academy and had nothing against homegrown footballers. While a year later, when an all-foreign Arsenal XI booked a place in the Champions League quarter-finals with a victory over Real Madrid, Alan Pardew, then manager of West Ham, told reporters, "We're losing the soul of English football." By comparison, other foreign coaches were able to ingratiate themselves into their host country, with Jose Mourinho helped in his early days at Chelsea by the popular perception that his defensively stout style was quintessentially British, something he played up by telling the press he would never field an all-foreign squad at Chelsea. So could refs be influenced by all this? It's certainly possible. Studies conducted in MLS, as well as in basketball and American football, suggest that officials might be affected by all sorts of bias, particularly racial, but also regional and national. A claim refs themselves strenuously deny, but is almost certainly true to at least some extent. After 2 decades of hatred aimed at Wenger's foreignness, his methods, his style, and his players, it wouldn't be surprising if some of that came out in refereeing even now. But just what has that refereeing looked like? Having looked at the past, let's get back to the present, and just what is going on at the Emirates under Arteta. In the last season and a half, the Gunners have played 60 games and received 8 red cards, more than any other team in that time, and won every 7.5 games. So you'd expect them to be one of the more aggressive sides in the league, cynically chopping down opponents regularly and reaping the consequences of those actions, right? Except the numbers say the opposite. According to WhoScored, Arsenal actually committed the fewest fouls of any side in 2020-21, but despite this, 3 teams received fewer yellows and a massive 18 received fewer red cards, with only Brighton losing a player more often. And when you compare them to a top 4 rival, the situation gets even starker. Manchester United earned a yellow card for every 7.1 fouls they committed, actually more frequently than Arsenal, who are cautioned every 7.4 fouls. But the Red Devils had to break the rules 452 times to earn a red, while Arsenal lost a man every 69 fouls, making their infractions a whopping 7 times more likely to end in expulsion than United's. The story is similar this season so far. Only one side has committed fewer fouls than the Gunners, but 4 have fewer yellows, and they're the only side in the Prem to have picked up 3 reds at this stage of the campaign. Compare them to Chelsea this time, and you can see the Blues get a yellow every 6.3 fouls, while for Arsenal it's every 6. Chelsea need 244 fouls to get a red, Arsenal are at just 68. These numbers are of course extremely volatile. Red cards are relatively rare even at the Emirates, and that means just 1 or 2 can really change the figures and make some stats look wonky. Meanwhile, Arteta's side also has the disadvantage of some rash players, with Gabriel prone to bad judgment at times and Granit Xhaka a noted lunatic whose studs are almost always up. However, bias isn't just limited to the reds Arsenal themselves receive, and could be a factor in the ones other sides don't, like Ben Godfrey's friendly stamp on Takahiro Tomiyasu's head in the December clash at Goodison, or this tasty challenge from James McArthur on Bukayo Saka earlier in the season, where he might just have missed the ball. And it certainly seems that some teams do benefit from lenient refereeing. With 10.2 fouls per game, Burnley are perfectly middle of the pack for aggression, itself a little surprising, but are the only team in the division to have not received a red card this campaign. Look into it further and you'll see the Clarets haven't actually had a man dismissed in the Prem since January 2019, a run of 3 years and 113 games. Are Burnley just less prone to violence than other teams? Probably not. Instead, are they viewed as a tough tackling team who play the old-fashioned way and therefore are allowed to get away with much more? Possibly. And if they are getting the benefit of the doubt, then other teams are at a disadvantage, and maybe one such side is Arsenal. Given what we've discussed here, you might expect us to conclude that the conspiracy nuts are right, and referees are sabotaging Arsenal's march back to the top 4. But while we've tried to give the theory a fair examination, the evidence is pretty shaky. As we've seen above, Arsenal are getting lots of reds, but don't pick up yellow cards more often than most other sides. And the teams that do get cautioned less often are high-pressing sides like Manchester City and Liverpool, who use fouls high up the field to break up attacks before they start, with Jota and Mane giving away free kicks roughly 4 times as often as Trent Alexander-Arnold or Joel Matip. And as we know, and the Arsenal players know too, those high fouls are punished less harshly than ones closer to your own goal, which often deny goal scoring opportunities, which is why of their 8 reds over the last 18 months, only 2 have gone to attackers. Penalties also contradict the narrative of Arsenal as victims. Football is a low-scoring sport, so penalties are huge game-changing events referees can really influence. But over the last 3 years, Arsenal have ranked around 5th for pens received, and this year have 3 for and 3 against, hardly indicative of refs seeking to punish them. In all, it seems there's a combination of factors contributing to Arsenal's horrible disciplinary records. Increased aggression from a young side, a couple of foolish players, plus the unlucky reds for Luiz and Martinelli make it seem like we're seeing a major trend, when actually, in hindsight, the majority of dismissals the side has suffered has been either indisputably correct or reasonable judgment calls from the refs, which VAR had no cause to overturn. As the team matures, Arteta's players should be less disposed to making foolish challenges, and a better Arsenal will also see fewer reds, as the defence should be caught out of position less often and therefore not have to make so many desperate tackles. We expect that before long, Arsenal stats will drift back into the normal range and it'll be another side stacking up the cards and claiming referee bias. The good news is that they'll probably be wrong, well, unless they're playing Burnley. So that was our explained on if there really is a referee agenda against Arsenal. Gunners fans, what do you think in the comments down below? What do you make of Pat's script? Let us know what other topics you'd like us to cover on Explained. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, hit that like button, and we'll see you next time.